Hey guys, Jocelyn here with Fantasia Elegance. We're going to be doing something a little bit different in this video. I wanted to take a break from jewelry making to show you how to make this very pretty snowflake Christmas tree ornament that I've designed. I figured with the holidays coming up this might be a fun project to show you. And you can also size this down and make it into a pendant or earrings, although that is a little bit trickier. Anytime you're working in miniature it becomes a little bit more difficult. But just so you know, there are multiple uses for this design. And it's not just for Christmas either. I like to hang these in my windows all winter long. So let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look at the tools and materials you'll be needing. You will need some chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and flush cutters. And I'll be using my Wubbers chain nose pliers instead of the Xuron tweezer nose that I normally use because the wider tips work a little bit better on the thicker gauge of wire that we'll be using. And I do have in the description section below a complete list of all the tools and materials and links to where you can purchase them, so check that out below. And you'll also need a ruler to measure wire, and this is optional, but I do feel like it makes the finished project look a little bit more nice, is to have a steel bench block and jeweler's hammer. For wire, you'll need two types. I'm going to be using some 1/16 inch aluminum wire that I got from riogrande.com. This is approximately a 13 gauge wire, so you can use either 12 or 14 gauge as well as a substitute. And again, I'll leave some links below for where you can purchase the wire for this. You'll also need some 18 gauge round dead soft, and again, I'll be using aluminum. I like aluminum for these ornaments because we are using a fair bit of wire, and if you used something like stainless steel or silver, it would make it fairly heavy and it might drag down your Christmas tree branch a bit. And also aluminum is very easy to work with, it bends very easily. So that makes it a lot easier to get some of these nice sharp bends in here. You can see I do have a bead in the center here. I just used an 8mm AB crystal that I got from Fire Mountain Gems. I will leave some links below for where you could find something like that, but again it's 8mm round crystal and I only used one in the center there. And if you want to turn this into an ornament, you might want some ribbon to put a little hanger on the top here. I'm just going to be using some ribbon that I got from my local Joann fabric store. I'll be using 1/8 inch thick ribbon. You'll only need about 6 inches or so of that. You can use any color you like. I think the 1/8 inch thick satin ribbon looks very nice though. And finally, I will be referencing this template that I made for you guys. I will make this available to you online to download. So go ahead and check out once again in the description section below if you want to get this. That'll help you follow along. You can make this fine without it, but this will help you as we go. So check out that description section below. You might need to click the See More to view this, or that little gray triangle icon if you're on a smartphone. So to get started, go ahead and pull out your thicker gauge wire, and we're going to need a 30-inch piece of this, so I'm going to straighten a fairly long length before I cut it. I just do that by running it back and forth between my fingers. You can also use a little bit of paper towel or cloth or something if you don't want your fingers to get torn up. So we need 30 inches. If you have a tape measure, you can just use that. I'm just going to do 3 sets of 10 inches here. There we go. And you can set that longer wire aside. We're done with it. And now we're just going to take this 30-inch piece and bend it right in half. So I'm going to put the ends together and run down so I have the center here. We're going to put our first bend in at the center. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just smush this on down on itself. So I've got a very sharp bend there with both wires running parallel now. And what we're doing is we're starting at this bottom point on the snowflake right here, and we're going to form this outer shape with the thicker wire. So again, we're starting right at the center bottom. So what I'm going to do at this point is spread these two wires apart a little bit at the bend we just made. And if you want to check that you're getting them spread apart the right amount, you have the right angle, you can just do this using the template. And I will show you how to do the next step without the template in case you don't want to get that. Basically, we're going to make bends at 1.5 centimeters out. So I'm just going to take my ruler here on the centimeters side. I'm going to put the point at the base of the ruler. I'm going to pull out a Sharpie, and I'm going to put a little mark at 1.5 centimeters. And you can go ahead and put another mark at the 3 centimeters. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, marking at 1.5 and 3 centimeters out. And then we're just going to put some little bends at those points. And I have long tails that I'm trying to maneuver around the camera here, so this will get easier as we go on and use up that wire length. Basically, we're just going to put a little bend in there, right at the mark we made, and a little bend in here at the other mark. And you'll know you've bent far enough when those two other marks cross over each other. There we go. And then we're going to make another little diamond shape below, but it's going to be smaller, so we're going to mark out 1 centimeter for these. So I'm going to put the end of the ruler at that mark right there, and we'll mark at 1 centimeter and 2 centimeters. I'm doing the same thing on the other side, 1 and 2. And then same deal as before, we're going to put a little bend right there at the first mark, and again at the second mark. And as before, these two lower marks should cross right over each other. And don't worry about the Sharpie, that'll rub off as you're working on this, and if it doesn't, you can take it easily off with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. So you should have something like that now, 2 diamond shapes on top of each other, the larger one being on top. And at this point, if we consult our pattern, we have gotten to the center of the snowflake now, and we're going to swing these ends around to start forming the other branches of the snowflake. So to do that, we're just going to put a sharp bend right where these two wires meet. I'm going to bring the wire all the way around back on itself, keeping that little Sharpie mark right at the center. We're going to crimp it on down, just like we did for this top portion. And again, you want to keep that little Sharpie mark right in the center of your crimp. And we'll do the same thing on this side. There we go. And these should be almost touching, but not quite. So now we have this. And then we're going to start forming the branches on either side. So we're doing the same thing we just did, only kind of in reverse with 1 wire at a time. So we want to make this smaller diamond shape now. So go ahead, once again, putting your ruler right at the base there, we're going to make a few marks for that smaller diamond shape. So I'll put one at the 1 centimeter mark, and another one at the 2. And that will bring us up to this point. So then you can go ahead and just save yourself some time and make the rest of the marks on out. So we've done 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, that'll bring us up to here if we're making the same thing over here. So then we'll form this portion with 2 1.5 centimeter lengths. So I'm going to go up to 3.5 and then 5, and that'll bring us up to this point. Then we need to go back down, but we'll be going over this way. So I'll do 2 more 1.5 centimeter lengths. So we're at 5, we'll go to 5.5, then we'll go to 8, and we'll stop there for now. I don't want to overwhelm you too much. So for our first bend, we're just going to start mirror imaging this over here. So we'll go off that direction. And now this one is a little tricky. We're going to skip over this mark and go straight to this one. We're going to bend this wire back towards what we've already formed. And then for the next mark, we're going to form the second point. So I'm going to bring this all the way around. Keeping that mark centered, I'm going to sandwich these 2 wires together and smush them on down. So we're making the second point like this one. And then go ahead and open them back up a little bit using your round nose pliers. There we go. And you should be seeing what's happening now. We're going to put another bend there. And those 2 marks we made should be crossing over each other. And there we go. And now at this point, your template is useful to make sure that you have these 2 points of the snowflake at a good distance from each other. So I'll just lay that on here, and we can see we need to bend this a little further. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, and I'll set that aside because it does mess up my camera's white balance when I have that out for some reason. And then, as you can see, we are almost back to where we started at the center. So let me just make one more mark for the 2 more marks actually. So starting where those wires cross, we'll just mark again 1 and 2 centimeters. And put those bends in to form the second lower diamond shape. So we're kind of working around in a circle, making spokes on a wheel, if you will. So again, this wire we're going to bend all the way back out from the center and tightening this on down. Just like so. We have now done 2 branches on our snowflake so far. We're going to do the exact same, this was our central starting one. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side that I did with this one. So we can go over that again. And this does get fairly repetitive, so I will go over this again with you, and then I might go ahead and finish up the snowflake. So again, starting from the center with our little ruler, we're going to mark at 1 and 2 centimeters, and that will bring us up to the point where the wires cross. So then we'll do 2 marks that are 1.5 centimeters. So that'll take us out to 3.5 and then 5. That'll bring us up to the point. So making 2 more marks at 1.5, that'll take us to 5.5 and 8. We'll then be down to this point. So we'll do 2 more marks that are 1 centimeter apart to form that lower diamond shape again. So we're at 8, we'll mark at 9 and at 10. Alright, so let's go ahead and put those bends in now that we have them marked out. And if for some reason the math of that is just really confusing for you, no judgments there, I know how that goes. You can simply shape the wire around the pattern and just not worry about measuring at all. So again, putting that bend in there, we're going to skip this first mark, go to the second mark, and we are now forming the larger upper diamond. There's that point. Going out to this next mark, we'll bring the wire all the way around, tighten it on down here, to put a tight crimp in. Then we'll open that back up a little bit. There we go. And forming the second edge of our larger diamond shape. There we are. These 2 marks should be crossing. Perfect. And here we are back towards the center again, forming the smaller diamond shape. And since we're at the center, we're going to swing this long wire back around all the way so that it's ready to form another spoke. There we go. Once again, we can check our template to make sure that these are lying in the correct locations. And this one does need to come down a little bit that direction, so I'll just move it with my hand. Easy peasy. Alright, looking pretty good there. So we're just going to do the same thing for 2 more spokes here. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we will come back and do the final spoke together because that one is a little bit different. Alright, so we now have 5 of our 6 branches, and what we're going to do is form this 6th and final one going straight up. We're going to do either side of it with these 2 wires. We're going to meet them at the top and form a little loop up there so that we can thread some ribbon on and hang our Christmas tree ornament. So keeping that in mind, This is what we have so far. We're going to be putting these bends in, so I'll go ahead and show you where to mark those to measure them out. We're going to, once again, start at the center here and go out 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter. That'll bring us up to that point. Then we'll switch to 1.5. We'll just do 2 of those. Then we'll do the same thing on this other one. So again, marking at 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3.5, and 5. And then we will just put those bends in that we marked out. And you want those 2 marks right there to be right on top of each other, just like that. And forming the upper diamond now. And you want these 2 marks to touch each other, so I need to adjust it so that that happens. So you should have something like that. I'm just going to double check with my pattern here that all the branches are going in roughly the right directions. And I think this one needs to come down a little bit. It doesn't have to exactly follow your pattern, unless you're a total perfectionist, but a little bit of deviation won't be super noticeable. Because we will be putting a second layer on this snowflake. So that's not too bad. So now we're going to finish off these 2 tails. We want to put a little wrapped loop in at the top here. And you do want it to be running perpendicular to your snowflake so that once you thread a ribbon on there, it will hang facing the front of your tree or wherever you're hanging it. So I'm just going to take one of these tails straight off to the side, and I'm bending it right at that mark that we made. And this other one, once again bending it right at the mark we made, I'm going to take it straight up, and I'm going to start wrapping this sideways tail around the vertical tail. And before I tighten it down, finally I'm just going to double check that everything looks good, and that I'm not warping it and tying it off in a way that has just deformed the careful snowflake shape I made. And I want to put in about 2 wraps with this wire here. So once you have 2, you can snip off that end with your flush cutters. There we go. So you should have that. And then with this top one, we're going to put a little loop in, and it's going to be perpendicular to the snowflake. So I'm going to take it off in that direction, coming straight towards the camera. Then switching to round nose pliers, I'm going to wrap this around. And I want to place the tail in such a way that when I wrap it around the base here, it butts up, the end butts up flush against that other end. And I want to leave room to put in 2 wraps with this tail as well. And like I said before, it looks good if this tail can end flush against the other tail, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball that and snip off the appropriate amount with my flush cutters. And I might actually need that a little bit shorter. So you should have something like this now. We've completed the bottom layer of our snowflake. And I do like to hammer this out a little bit. That's not required by any means. I just feel like it makes it a little bit more shiny, a little bit more finished. I do think this is sturdy enough without doing the hammering because all these little bends add some stability, but hammering will make it more sturdy as well. So I'm just going to pull out my steel bench block, and I'm going to hammer this thing a little bit. What I'm going to do is lightly hammer each join here where the wires cross each other. That will help seal in the shape and keep it from shifting. You know, that'll keep these diamond shapes the right proportions. And then I will heavily hammer the outer portion of these outer diamonds, and I will very lightly go over just the center portion here, and the rest I will not hammer. So this is what we have so far, and you can kind of just use your fingers to adjust it so that it's all lying flat. It can get a little bit warped as you're hammering. But that is our first layer, so let's go ahead and make the second layer now with the thinner gauge wire. So for this next layer, the twisted wire, we're going to pull out our 18 gauge wire. And go ahead and unwind some of that off the spool. We're going to need a 28-inch length of this. So I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit. So 28 inches, I'm going to do 10, 10, and 8. And I normally use a tape measure, but for the lengths of doing this under the camera, it's easier to use a ruler. So we've got our 28 inches here. Let me go ahead and straighten that out just a little bit more. And for this one, we're going to start 9 inches in from the end. So 9 inches there. Going to mark it with my thumb. And that's where we're going to make our first bend. We're going to use round nose pliers. Just going to put in a little bend there. And what we're doing is making one of these tips on this shape. We're starting there and we're going to work our way in towards the center. So I'm going to cross the wires over each other and make kind of a little teardrop shape. There we go. And if you have your template, you can check the size on there to make sure you're getting it about the right shape and size. If you don't have the template, let me measure it for you. It's going to be just about 1/4 inch long of a teardrop shape here. And then we're going to start making a little flower shape by putting additional bends on either side of this. And these ones are going to be a little bit smaller. So there's one, and we'll do another one on the other side with the other wire. And there's two. And I'm just going to refine this a bit to make sure it's symmetrical. And let me double check the size here. It's a little bigger than we need, so I'll make these wings a little bit smaller. So something like that. And it should be just about 1/2 inch wide at this point. So what we're going to do now is start twisting these two wires together. So I'm going to grip the shape we just made with my thumb and fingers, and then grip the two wires with my other fingers, and I'm just going to start twisting it. And you want to twist until you have about 1 inch here from the tip to the end of your twist. So that's just about right. There we go. And then what we're going to do is take our longer wire, which for me is on the left right now, and we're going to take it off to the side so that we can start going in a circle and making these shapes all the way around the snowflake. So I'm just going to bend it off to the side. And at about 1/4 inch in, you're going to bend it out for another spoke. And if you have the template here, you can just follow along like there. If you don't, you can just measure about 1/4 inch in there to make your bend. And then this is where it does come in handy to have the template, and I do recommend it. Because we're working with one strand of wire now, we need to allow extra length for the twist. Because after the twist you want it to be this length, but you're not sure beforehand, so I have figured it out for you. And if you use this lower part of the template, which on yours will look something like this, I'm still working on it, but that's what it'll look like for you guys. This will kind of show you where pre-twist you need to make your first bend. Basically, you're going to be about 1¼ inches. Because like I said, for this length, it's 1 inch from the base of the twist to the top. And for this one, you're going to add about 1/4 inch, because when you twist it, it'll get shorter. So about 1/4 inch up is where you will make your first little arm. But if you have the template, you can just lay it on top of there and put your first bend in. So we're just going to do that. And once you have your first bend, you can kind of wing it from there. That's the most important one, to get the measurements right. So same thing in reverse, we're working our way up and out now. We're going to do one smaller little loop, and then the larger one on top. And just checking that we're keeping our size correct there. And putting in our third loop, which is the second smaller loop, excuse me. So you should have something like that now. And just double checking on our template that they're the correct distance apart. And as you can see here, this branch right now is sticking out a little bit further than we want because we haven't twisted it yet. So that is why you make it the longer length, because now we're going to twist it, and that should shorten it up to where it is the correct length to match the other spokes. So just twisting this here. I'm going to twist until I have about that 1/4 inch distance between. And there we go, that is just about perfect. And you might need to adjust your twist a little bit. You can see here it got a little bit crooked as I was twisting. You can just fix that with some adjustments with your chain nose pliers to get a pretty twist in there. There we go. And again, double checking that these are the right angle apart. So now we're just going to do the same thing, continuing on around with our long tail here. So again, putting that bend in about 1/4 inch out to start forming another spoke, and then switching to the longer lengthed arm to find our first bend, just like that, and making a smaller little loop with a larger one on top, and then a second smaller one, and double checking the size, and then we will twist again. And as before, you may need to refine this a little bit. There we go. So we're going to keep doing that same thing around. We're going to do 2 more with this longer tail and 1 arm with the shorter tail, and then we will come back and finish this off. So this is what you should have then after you finish those other branches. We've got our 2 tails crossing over each other here down at the center of the snowflake, and you can double check that everything is proportionate and you've got the right distance between each branch, and mine don't exactly match up. That's fine. You do have some variance and it'll still look good. You don't have to have everything, mathematically perfect. This is a handcrafted ornament, so I figure folks will give you some leeway with that. So now what we're going to do is bind off these ends here, and what I'm going to do for that is just kind of twist them around each other. So I'm going to put this one through the center. Oops, through the center I said. There we go. And then I'll bring it up and around. Maybe go back through the center. So we've got that one kind of twisted there, and then for this other one, I'm going to take it behind here and start wrapping it again like the other one through the center and around this adjacent little connecting wire. We're kind of just making this inner hexagon look twisted texture like these branches are. So I'm going to keep feeding this through and wrapping it around. And going back to the other one, we'll keep doing that same thing. Feeding it through the center so that we can twist it around these other wires. And once you've twisted all the way around that inner hexagon, we can trim these off. I'm just going to smush that end on down like that so that it's somewhat hidden. And we'll do the same thing with the other tail. Just tightening that end on down. So we've got something like that now. You might need to readjust your ends a little bit, because mine tend to get messed up a little as I'm doing that. That's okay. There we go. So now we have our two pieces, and we're going to sandwich these on top of each other, just like this. And how we're going to do that is by putting in a few bindings on each branch, and those bindings will go all the way around the upper twist and the lower two branches there. So go ahead and pull out your 18 gauge wire. We're going to cut a few lengths of this, 6 in total. And we don't need very much on these pieces, probably about 2 1/4 inches will be sufficient. So go ahead and cut 6 of those. I'm going to put a bend in all of these at once, just a U shape in the middle of them, to get them prepped for our purposes. So go ahead and set those aside. We'll just work with one for now. So the first wrap is the trickiest. I like to get everything lined up how I want. So you want it just like that, with the two centers overlapping each other. And then I'm going to use my left hand fingers to pinch everything together so that I can work on just one spoke at a time. I'm going to drop that little binding over there. And then I'm going to use chain nose pliers to cross them over at the back. And I am switching now to my Xuron tweezer nose pliers since we're working with thinner wire. And we'll just wrap that several times around all 3 of those wires. And you might need to readjust as you go to make sure that everything's staying in alignment. And we'll put in a third wrap here. And before I tighten this one down all the way, I'm going to put in one on the opposite side to help hold everything in place. So I'm leaving myself a little wiggle room with this so that I can get everything locked down and in position. So I'm taking another of those U-shaped pieces that we made. Same as before, crossing the tails over at the back, bringing it up and around so that I can start wrapping here. And going to the other tail, bringing it up and over. And I'm just checking that it's centered. And once it is centered, I can tighten this down a little more. And I like to do about 3 bindings before I snip off the ends. Make sure you do that on the back so that you can hide those ends. And we'll flatten them on down. And the other one. There we go. Now that we've got that somewhat locked in correctly, we can go ahead and tighten this other binding over here. And you want it the same distance from the center that this other one is, so I'm going to scooch it in a little bit. And cutting off those ends on the back again. So we've got 2 of our bindings in, and we're just going to go around and do the exact same thing with the other 4 spokes that aren't bound yet. So here we have our snowflake all assembled, and you could go ahead and leave it like this. I do like to add a little crystal in the center. I just think that finishes it off nicely. So I'm going to pull out my 8mm diameter faceted round glass crystal beads. Just going to need 1. And we're going to attach this with the same 18 gauge wire. We don't need very much, just about, I don't know, you want about an inch, at least an inch or so on either side of your bead. So we'll snip that off. We're just going to set this in the center, with the wire going above and below it. And then we're going to tuck the wire through there, down to the back. And we'll do that on each side. So this one's going to go through here. So we have something like that, and I'm just going to cross the wires over each other at the back. And then taking your chain nose pliers, I'm going to spin these two wires to tighten them over each other. And to kind of lock that bead into place. So I've got the tails going like that. I'm going to grip both. I'm just going to twist it. And you don't want to twist it too many times because the aluminum is very fragile, so it will just break on you if you twist it too many times. So I put in one good twist there. I'm just going to push it down so that it's flat. So there's our crystal on the front and our ends on the back. And to finish off these ends, I'm just going to snip so that I have about a 1/2 inch of wire. And I'm going to curl the ends and put in just a little decorative kind of loop. So even though people don't see the back, it's still nice if it looks good. Push that one down there. And we'll take this one and curl it the other direction, so we're making kind of a little S shape. There we go. And push that one down. So that's what the back looks like. And here's what the front looks like. So you could just hang this on a tree using a little ornament tree hanger. I like to add some ribbon. I think that finishes it off nicely. Again, I'm using some 1/8 inch thick satiny ribbon. You can get this at Walmart or any craft store. But I will see if I can find some on Amazon to give you a link, just because. And I like to do about 7 inches here. Well, maybe I'll do 7.5 so we have room to, let's do 8. I keep changing my mind. I want to make sure I have room to tie a knot in here, so we'll do 8 inches. There we go. And then you can just thread it through on top. Yeah, 8 inches was the right amount. I'm just going to take both of these ends together and put a really simple knot in. And you want to have about 1/2 inch tails, so I'm going to work the knot up a little bit. There we go, just tighten that on down. And then I like to put a little angle cut on my ends here. And sharper scissors are better. And then what you can do to keep these from fraying is just paint it with a little bit of cheap clear nail polish. Just dab that on the ends there, and that'll keep your ribbon from fraying. You could also use a little bit of glue or whatever you have on hand. So that is our finished ornament. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, found it easy to follow. Feel free to leave a comment below if you ran into any issues or had any questions along the way. And let me know if you would like to see more of these ornament tutorials. I know this is a little bit different than the usual jewelry making I do. You could size this down and turn it into a pendant or earrings, of course. You just need to use much thinner gauge wire, and you'd be working with smaller shapes, so it would be a little bit more of a challenge. So I do recommend you try making this with the thicker gauge wire as an ornament first. But if you want to see more of my videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And make sure you also click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. And another great way you can support my channel and help me keep making free videos like this is to head over to that link that I will leave below and download the template that I made for you guys. Again, you might need to click the little See More button below the video if you're on a computer, or you might need to click the little gray triangle arrow icon to the right of the video title if you're on a smartphone in order to expand that description section, and that will allow you to see the complete list of tools and materials as well as the links that I mentioned in the video. So again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you are having a great holiday season and everyone has a wonderful Christmas. Happy crafting, and I will see you next time.